Hello, welcome back to the Starting Story podcast with your host, Krishna Palmer. Here we talk to business leaders and entrepreneurs about their start in this world of entrepreneurialism and the story they've taken to get to where they are right now. Today, my special guest is Bonny Buckner. Now, she has a pretty unique story, something that I've never heard of before. She is the board member of the American Diary Project, not dairy, diary. And she created this ultimately to try and record all the diaries that people around the world write, to record their own life stories. This has become the only diary project in America, founded in 2022, and it's a non-profit dedicated to preserving and digitizing unpublished diaries and journals from everyday Americans. They have over 300 diaries housed in their library in Cleveland, Ohio, and a network of more than 70 volunteers with which they serve as a premier destination for capturing the narratives of normal, ordinary Americans. So something pretty unique, something I'm really excited to talk to her about. So join me as I speak to Bonny Buckner about her starting story. Bonny, thank you so much for coming on to the Starting Story podcast with me today. It means a lot, calling all the way from America. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks, Christian, for having me. I'm so glad to be here and share with your listeners here today.
Well, I'm genuinely interested just to know more about what's going on here. As I said in the introduction, the American Diary Project, I first came across it, I was like, what is this thing? And I first actually read it wrong as the American Dairy Project. So I thought you were doing some kind of milk or cheese making. And then I read it right and I was like, wait, there's even more weird. That they're collecting diaries? I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense. Why did you have this? I mean, do you want to give a little introduction into what is this? Why did it even get started? It's something that sounds so niche and kind of unique that people would often overlook it. Like, diaries are supposed to be a personal thing. Why collect them? Do you want to talk a bit more about kind of why this is so important for the world?
Yeah, sure. So I think a philosophy I've had my whole life, everybody has a story, and I always wanted to tell them. And so I majored in journalism during college. That's my degree field. And I thought I was just going to be that girl writing newspaper articles and magazine articles or scripts for news broadcasts and things like that. And that didn't happen. So, I still it's like deep down philosophy in me. And I do feel like, I do writing freelance myself, outside of work and all these things. And it's just this like deep rooted thing in me. So fast forward the American Diary Project, that's the thing. A lot of history, like history buff people, like to use diaries as firsthand accounts of historical events. We've also had family genealogy folks use diaries as firsthand knowledge of people, because even if your family member directly didn't keep a diary, but someone else did, and they wrote about that person that's in your family, you might learn something about your old family member that you never knew before, right? Like, a lot of times when you're doing your family tree or you're figuring out your genealogy, you only have a name and the dates that they lived.
Yeah.
But you might not know what they were like back when they were in elementary school, or you have some funny stories of shenanigans they did during high school days or anything like that. It's just kind of one of those things of like, we all have this lived experience and lessons to be learned from that, or even just silly, funny things. And so you don't have to be a very famous, king, or you don't have to be a famous president or anything to have some history in yourself that's worth kind of celebrating.
That's so true. And like I said, it's sometimes overlooked because it really is. We don't realize just how many stories people live with. Even the person who might seem to have the most, non-distinct, kind of very vague life. There'll be so many experiences that you'll be like, whoa, I never knew that about you. And I'm sure we've had in conversations as well. Like, I'm sure you've spoken to that one person which you feel like you've known for a year, and then they embark upon you a story they had, and you're like, wait, what? I would have never guessed that that's what you've done, or that's who you've spoken to. And diaries is a thing which, you can really delve into people's like deeper and like personal lives. Everyone puts up a front, don't they, when they're like outside? They like to like, what's it called, like project themselves as like the best and the most successful person of themselves. But of course, in the diary, do you hear the hidden secrets of what that person was actually thinking, what was going on inside their mind? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like recording that for others is such a nice way to not put it to waste, because it's all like, even though it's not really evidence, but it is kind of evidence of like a life worth lived kind of thing. And at least like having it there. I mean, I flicked through some of the diaries. There's one which is about some man who worked the land. It's called like Ohio Small Black Diary or something. I was flicking through it and I was like, whoa, I can just go into this person. Like someone's actually got a pencil, wrote this. I can see the handwriting. I can see what they were doing. It was like something I've never seen before. Like I say to people, even to people, to listeners, like even if you don't do anything, just go onto their website, just choose a random diary that they go online, and just like out of curiosity, just flick through some of the pages. It's like insane how it's like you immediately get a deep dive into that person's just personal writing, which I mean, there's no other way of doing it really. There's no other way you
Right.
can that easily get into someone's personal life than go into their diary, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
But
where did that when was the first time that you thought that this needs to be turned into like a actual collection mission, like a real mission where we need
oh,
to actively go out and collect these diaries?
yeah, so our founder, Kate, she back in 2021 and 2022 was doing her will, and she looked at her diaries and said, what's, when you're planning out your what happens after you die, right, and you're making your will and you're talking about your family and things like that, and she looked at her diaries and said, what's going to happen to these?
Mm,
Like, are they just going to go to the dump? Like, who wants
yeah.
them? What treasures lie in here? Like you said, what stories lie in here? And she just had this idea. It's like, let's make a historical library. And I had the same problem about the same time, right? So in 2021 and 22, my parents downsized their house, and I still had all of my old diaries at my
Mhm.
parents' house. And they were like, come get your stuff, Bon. So that's what I did. I got all of my diaries. I had 25 years worth of diaries. I've been keeping the diaries
Wow.
since I was 13. And 13-year-old Bonnie is very different than 40-year-old Bonnie, you know? And so I got all my diaries, and I had them all in this big trunk. And I got it from my parents' house, and I got them all cataloged. I made a spreadsheet of all of them. I put them all up on bookcase. I bought bookcases, and I got them all put up on the bookcases. And I looked at the bookcases and I said, okay, now what?
Hmm.
I had the same problem. I'm almost 40. I don't have kids. What's going to happen to these? I have a whole museum of my life right here.
Yeah.
And who's going to want it? And I thought, wow. So, just, we all just randomly scroll things on the internet. We all do. And I found that this girl in Ohio had started a diary collection. And I thought, well, that's exactly what I need. This is where they could go after I'm gone. And Kate started. She bought a few diaries like on eBay and things, and then she started the website. She started social media, and that's how I came about to find her in the spring of 23. And I just knew this is something I had to be a part of. I said, this is perfect. This is right up my alley. This is exactly what I need for myself. And if I need this, other people do too.
Mm.
So I just wrote in and I said, I'd love to help. Let me volunteer. She had a call out for volunteers, and she's in the next state over. I could easily go see her. And so that's what we did. I started volunteering, and you saw the things. We have diaries on our website, and what we do is we image them, the ones that we get that are ready to be published. And she had many imaged, but we didn't have any of them typed out
Mm.
because that's a lot of time effort. So that's what I started volunteering to do. I said I can read these images and I can start typing them out, and that's where I started. So we did that for a long time, and now I'm on the board and driving, planning for the future. What's going to happen? Our 3, 5, 10-year goals. What's our goals after? Someday I'm not going to be here. We want this to be an ongoing historical project for
Yeah, of
years
course.
to
Yeah, I mean, sounds amazing, and the fact you ought to just kind of link up and say, look, we've got similar goals here. Let's work together. And yeah, it's so true. Like obviously, with the sheer nature of a diary means that because of handwriting, you can take pictures of it, but is it that searchable? Because again, if you think about it, if there is a researcher or a historian, or you never know, there might be some like a sort of criminologist who's there going, oh, that past murder case, I wonder if we can have any information on it. For them, sifting through images, sure, it gets the job done, but it's going to be so tedious. Whereas if they've just been given, here's the diary, but it's been written up, then they can easily do all the word formatting. They can easily just search really quickly what page and where was this kind of stuff written about. And I think it's something that in the future you may have considered or not, but in the future you could start making this into like a database of like stories or like people who were covered in these diaries, and almost start creating for, especially for people that might be looking towards like, oh, what who wrote something about my granddad. You could have a diary that's kind of spoken about them or that they wrote themselves. It's something that's, because it's so unique and because it's so young, the possibilities are endless. And I'm sure you must have so much trouble in your meetings trying to decide where do we actually put our energy in, because you kind of put it, you want to put it everywhere, right?
We do.
So
a lot of ideas, a lot of creative folks, right? And creative folks are always dreamers.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we got to write it in. So, but we've had a good trajectory. It's been, everybody that we talk to is very receptive to it, and a lot of positive response. And this makes me so happy. Like, I know we're doing the right thing, and diaries are so important to me. So for it to be so loved by other people, it makes me happy. I thought I was, diary writing can be a very singular experience, right? You're sitting in your bedroom just writing down your thoughts, and you're like, what's going to come of this? And does this even matter? 13-year-old Bonnie never thought this would happen, right? That, all these years later, it would mean something. And I think that's what's been really reaffirming to me.
Yeah, of course. Well, why do you talk a little bit more about like your start? Because this is very much like a passion project, and the main thing that can be disadvantage to passion projects, which I'm sure many people would kind of agree with or at least kind of align with, is funding them can be difficult, especially when you want to take them big scale. Lots of people have hobbies. You'll have that one person who's like, oh, I love to paint, or I love to write music, or I love to go out on a walk. These are all hobbies, but if you want to scale something that you're truly passionate about, where there's no direct actual link to money, it can be difficult. Right. And lots of people unfortunately quit. Lots of people think, well, do I follow my passion or do I follow the money? And a lot of people choose the money option, right? Some people have family, they have children, they have things to feed, they have things to do. So right at the beginning, when you're both kind of clicking, you're like, this is something we want to do. Did you ever have a consideration like, okay, this is something we want to do, but to make this go big, we need to have some sort of funding so that we can buy more bookshelves, buy the place to put this in? What was that kind of conversation like right at the beginning?
Yeah, and it's still exactly what you said. It's an ongoing conversation. We are all, as of now, we are all volunteer led. None of us are being paid, which, and to me, like you said, it's a passion project. I'm here for the long haul. I think the conversation now for us is, we don't have a lot of overhead. We have a small office space in our library, and some supplies. So we've been able to do that. Really, right up until now, we've been entirely donation based.
Okay.
It's been a lot of just private people that love what we're doing and they want to jump on too and support us. We are starting to, what we've realized, we had these big aspirations and we're like, okay, we're going to apply for all the grants. But what we've encountered, some of the grant world has changed a lot with the administration in the U.S.
Right.
And funding is very kind of paused in some areas and things like that. So what we've also encountered too is that a lot of the funds that are available on a national level are kind of more for bigger organizations, right? So if there are funds to be given, would the government as a whole want to give it to the United Way or the Red Cross or some of these big national charities, or would they want to give it to a small charity overall, right? So that's been our skill, is that these national projects and these national grants are such a large scale operation, and we're not there yet. We don't need a $20 million a year budget. We need a much smaller than that.
Yeah, of course.
So we have gotten in contact, and we are working with some of the local arts and historical societies and arts grants in our nearby towns. And so that's what we've been really applying for especially even this year, we've gotten a lot more momentum behind like focusing local. Where are some local areas and local arts groups that that believe in our diary mission, and we don't need $10 million. We need a much smaller fraction of that to still be operational and be in good standing. So that's been our focus right now. Of course, we always want to develop our relationship with our private donors and things like that. But it's a new world for us that we're still navigating,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
It's a new but exciting world, and it's something that you just have to be open to the opportunities, right? And the reason I asked the question is because right at the beginning, um, because all this grant work you're doing now, you're kind of working on keeping it going, right? But right at the beginning, like it would have just been you buying the bookshelves, just you kind of keeping it together, right? And even donations come, but people need to know about what you're doing for them to donate, right? Like, I could start collecting books here, but I'm not going to get donations because no one knows I'm doing it. So what was that like? Even though donations keep you going, they keep you afoot. But how did you kind of tell people that, look, this is what we're doing? And then more importantly, how do you tell them that this is important?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there's a solid answer for that for me right now. I think it's been a little bit of, let's try this and see if it works, and then
Yeah.
it worked. And oh, we put a link on our social media, we have a pop-up on our website. We are going to start soon merchandise sales,
Oh,
and we can
nice.
receive commission from that too, right? So I'm hopeful for that project here coming up soon, probably this summer, right? So it's kind of like, okay, let's try. We found this website that gives us a commission for merch. Let's see how it goes. We
Yeah,
got nothing to lose. It's worth a try. If we love it, great. If we don't, okay, let's move on to the next thing.
exactly.
I think it's important to just keep a realistic perspective. Know that you're not going to make $1 million from merchandise sales out of the gate, but it's like, if you got nothing to lose, it doesn't hurt to try. And it actually hurts not to try, because then you never know.
Yeah.
The not taking a chance is worse than taking a chance and failing forward, I think. So
That's amazing. That's so inspirational because coming from someone who's running a not profit, coming from someone who's not, a multimillionaire living in some really rich place somewhere, it still shows that you've got that thinking, that positive growth mindset of like, why not just give it a go? Why not see where it takes us? And that kind of same thinking of, I'd rather give it a go and fail than never knowing if it would have worked in the first place. And that's a really good mindset to have just in any aspect of life, really, not just business. Um, and so I saw you've got a website. It's a pretty nice website. For something which is just a not profit, it's a really good website. And the fact that you've got all like the diaries on there as well. When did you have the idea that maybe let's make a website and start creating this kind of online presence which people can reach out to, but then they can also read some of our diaries?
that's always been the thought. Is It was just always in the beginning, like, this is history. We have these at our hand.
Hmm.
Let's put it out there. That's because I think if readers, it's one thing if you had a diary project and you had a library of diaries, over 300 books, but nobody can read them. Well, then why do they care? Why does it matter?
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
like this, like,
Yeah,
treasure, like a time capsule or something. We didn't want to be a time capsule. We want to be educating people and like, hey, cool, here. We're kind of having fun with the history. Let's teach about history. Let's support current diary folks, right? Like, here's some people that went before you. Here's people who wrote these diaries from years ago. Do it too. You can kind of play around with it, and maybe you take some inspiration from the past written diaries too. It's always been the focus that we wanted to put everything online.
yeah, of course. And in growing this, have you ever had any kind of struggle at any point in the last 4 or 5 years? Has there been any point where you've kind of struggled? It could be in anything, could be related to collecting diaries or funding it or finding places to put all this stuff. Any place where you've come across like a major hurdle in getting this going?
I think the hurdle, that's a good question. The what comes to mind mostly is just getting the word out. And
Mm.
because, yeah, we have our website and social media, but people got to even know about us enough to go find us on social media.
Yeah.
And so, and we don't run on advertising. We don't, it's all been word of mouth, and we've spread very well just word of mouth, but it is such a the United States is very large,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's just getting in front of the right people. I could stand in a theater full of 50,000 people, but if none of those people write in a diary, none of that matters.
Mm.
It's getting in front of the right people. Now, I always say, even if I were in a crowd of 50,000 people that don't keep a diary, about 40% of people do.
Okay.
And so this is kind of the approach that I've taken now. I kind of got away from this diary. How do I find diary people? How do I find diary people? And now my focus is I need to find outer edge and outer rim affiliations. So historical societies or lawyers who plan out funerals. Hey, maybe they
Yeah.
encounter diaries too, right? There is how can I find some writing groups here in my town that just like get together and write poetry? Or how can I get connected to like English professors and things like that? Because of course, anybody who's probably studying writing, they probably keep a diary. But that said too, like I said, about 40% of people do keep a diary. So in my mind now, I'm like, okay, even Krishna, if you don't keep a diary, that's all right. You probably know somebody who does.
Mm. Yeah.
And so my thought is I want you to know about me because when your friend comes to you and says, "Gosh, what am I going to do with my diaries when I die?" I want you to be able to say, "Hey, you know what? I heard about this place.
Yeah.
You should go to their website." That's the thing. So that's kind of been my change of focus this year. I think before this year, I was really focused on how do I find diary people? How do I find diary people? Now I'm like, well, how do I find people that are on the fringe of that? And so that's what I've been trying to work on this year for myself.
That's true, and that's very similar to lots of other things. When you're trying to market to people, the obvious, clear thing, the first thing you do is just go to those people directly. But another thing you could do is go to the services that those people use, so you've got that connection. So, like you said, lawyers, or even, for example, like people who direct wills, help people write their wills. You could inform them that if this person in their will writes about diaries, or even if they don't write about diaries, the person in the will could say, "Do you have diaries?" And they go, "Yes, I do." Do you know what you're going to do with them? No idea, probably get thrown in the bin. Well, there is a better place you could send them to where they could get, appreciated, rather than sending it in the bin. It's like your life's work. At least put it in a place that gets appreciated. And it's about reaching out to the people and the services that your target market kind of approaches naturally, so that it feels like less of a salesy thing and more of a like, we want to help you, and
Yeah.
you can help us in reverse as well. And of course, this is all like a trial and error thing. And this is why I said, like, I've spoken to some people on the podcast which own like big businesses. And for them, this is a lot harder because now they have they might have a team of 30 people around them. They can't just start trial and erroring everything because suddenly people's salaries are, hanging in the balance, or people's livelihoods. Whereas that's something so unique and exciting about having something that's so new, because you can really just go for it and you have nothing to lose and just enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And when you're doing this and you're kind of creating these diaries, right, and you're kind of digitizing them, who have you had that's approached you? Have you had any specific people who've come to you and said, "We'd like to have access to your resources"? I'm only asking because on your website it says that public license owned by us, but public can access them. That
Yeah.
insinuates that people are wanting to read them, maybe come in, maybe it could be evidence based, could be story based, could be ancestral based. What kind of things you hear about on a daily basis?
Yeah, we had someone approach us. They are writing a book, a compilation book of teenage girls and how they like to write in their diaries and how
Hmm.
teenage girls have evolved in their diary keeping over the last 100 years. So they approached us if we would help, and we had some ideas that we gave along to her. Um, I know we did have um, an author that writes books. She writes like some novels and things like that, a lot of fiction. But she's a part of a writing group, and she had it was 100 authors, and they kept a journal all of 2024.
Hmm.
And just a day in the life of the writer. This group of 100 writers, they're going to keep a journal for a whole year, and then we got the books.
Wow.
So it was just kind of so that was kind of a fun collaboration too. Um, I know the historical society that's in my town, they've been very interested. I've been emailing with them. We're trying to navigate, and there's another like poetry society in the next town over that I've chatted with a little bit. They had a poetry retreat weekend, and they took some of our brochures and things and put them in all of the goodie bags for all of the attendees, just to kind of put the idea in their mind. Hey, if you have journals at home,
Yeah,
we're
send
not
them
using
in.
journals here at this retreat. This is a poetry retreat. But probably most poets probably at some point have kept a diary, and so it's like, all right, here, just something top of mind for them. So we'll probably be collaborating with that poetry group also ongoing too.
Yeah, and what's your process like when a diary comes in? Because I assume some of them might be pristine condition, but some of them might not be. They might be really tattered. What's your process in like something comes in, and then maybe you deciding, does this go into the online medium? Does this just stay in our stock, but it doesn't get published? What's the decision making process behind that?
Yeah, so every diary comes in with a donation sheet, and we really just ask. This is one pager, and we just ask, okay, what do you? Because sometimes we also get diaries that are not from the person directly.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
so we some diaries we know more about than others,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we just ask, who is the author? What do you know about this diary? Do you know when this person was born and when they died, if that's applicable? And then so we get the intake form. Yes, we do get a lot in good condition and bad condition and everybody in between. We really don't do restoration unless there's something drastically wrong.
Okay.
But that's kind of what we like about having some of the tattered books, is that that's kind of part of the diary experience too, right? It
Yeah.
gets kind of thrown around in your book bag and gets kind of beat up, right? So we don't do any restoration unless things are drastically damaged and are not going to sustain. They go in they look like Ziploc bags, but they're plastic, little clear bags that helps keep some of the air
Yeah, so it doesn't damage
around
further.
it, but not like too much air and humidity around it.
Hmm.
And then we do have like a Dewey Decimal System, so to say, about um, about the books, the number, and we know every book is numbered, every book, and then a list the author and things like that.
Mm.
And then we do have, I don't have one here with me. These boxes are used by museums. They're acid-free archival um, preservation boxes, so to
Okay.
say, and they're gray and I don't know how to describe them, but they're all uniform size too, so they fit well because all books are different sizes too.
Hmm.
So we want to make sure that everything fits on the bookcases in our library evenly. So all of the books go in the plastic bag, and then that plastic bag goes in those archival books or in those archival boxes that are acid free and everything like that. And those are meant for long term storage, like I said, museums and other places. That's a standard of operation for that kind of storage.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised. Because I was talking about things that are damaged already, but of course, if you're gonna keep a massive collection of books that obviously are past their prime, you just want to make sure you're not damaging them further. And of course, if you were to just stuff them all on the bookshelf one by one, then air, humidity, maybe chemicals, stuff like that, will just damage them. And that's exactly what we don't want. We want to preserve it, right? So yeah, it is interesting you talk about the entire process of how you make sure it's in a situation where it can't get damaged further. The way we received it is we're aiming to keep it in that way as much as possible. Um, but again, all of this stuff, kind of going back to the funding thing, all this stuff um, isn't cheap. I don't think it's cheap. All this kind of museum quality equipment, all these bookshelves, all the rent you might pay for the place you're keeping it, the museum. Um, you talked about donations, but even right now, is donations the main form of like how you're keeping this going? Or are you looking at more novel techniques? You said merchandising, which is an interesting one because if people genuinely resonate with your mission, then they might be willing to wear it, and then that's almost kind of free marketing on top of that as
Yeah,
well, because people be like, wait, free diary project, what is that? And you get that free marketing going. So there's like multiple layers to this, right? But what
yeah.
other things have you thought about that might be able to bring some more funding or at least bring some more interest to this thing that you're doing?
Oh, yes. Another, but we haven't talked about this yet. We are going to start hosting some events at our place. So we want to have diary classes and like
Yeah.
art journaling kind of things. So more to, and so similarly, we can use that as a fundraiser too of, having like a small fee to be in the class.
Yeah,
If you pay
amazing.
$20 or $30 for an afternoon session to learn how to do some of these things. So another thing that we've thought about, um, we have done some, you see this on social media too, and we've done this before when Facebook has you host a birthday fundraiser
Mm,
for your own birthday, or sometimes we've benefited from this before, that there's like a certain company, like a workplace, that'll say, okay, if you donate, like a workplace matching donation. So we've been a benefactor of that a few times too, which has been very generous and great, because that's just um usually it's unexpected, and it's just even above and beyond what we were hoping for too. So that's been very nice. Um that's I, we're just trying, the biggest thing to me, I think I would like to see, is getting the classes off the ground, because
mm,
that's the easy way. If we have someone like me, if a class is 2 hours long, I could probably run 3 classes on a Saturday afternoon.
yeah,
So if I get 10 people in each class, charge each of them $20, times that by three, that's going to pay our rent for a couple months, just
nice.
taking a one Saturday to do that. And I can do that even just, I have a full-time regular job. So, that's something easy enough to do. I can take 6 hours on a Saturday, schedule out 3 classes, and do that. So I'm really curious to see how the classes and how the merchandise is going to help us this year as we're starting those.
Yeah, of course, and it's a strategy that loads of museums use as well, because clearly if you've got something on display, at least show it to people, and you can attract people from all age groups. You could have all the way from children coming in, learning about diaries, the importance of diaries, and maybe even reading some, because children have that innate curiosity. They'll just be like, "Whoa, what is this? Old diary, old books, old pages, old stories," and then you can invite teenagers. All the way up to even like retired people that might want to come in and just see like old stories and kind of just revel in the information that's available at them. So you've got your target market is not really limited to any particular occupation or any particular
No.
age group, any particular gender, which is so nice because it means you can reach out to everyone. And the reason you can do that is because diaries are a collection of life stories. And therefore, a collection of life stories is applicable to absolutely everyone, because everyone is living a life and everyone has their own unique stories. Which not all businesses can say that. Not all businesses can say that they appeal to literally anyone. So it's a ability that you guys can really harness, and I'm sure it'll be at least interesting to people, because I'm sitting all the way in a different country and I read about it and I was like, whoa, this sounds so cool, this sounds so good. So I'm sure being in that actual place must be a completely different immersive experience, trying to get this done, right?
Yeah, I agree. That's a good perspective. I hadn't thought so much of, like, 40% of people keep a diary. I keep coming back to that statistic, but like you said, I started a diary when I was 13, and I'm 40 now. And so it does transcend gender, age.
Yeah.
I know that there's some 9-year-olds that are keeping diaries right now. And so it's like, I want to keep the kids keeping their diaries, because I want them to be the next generation to take this over for us.
Hmm.
And getting them involved in these classes and stuff now, getting them involved in reading a journal, um, that'll keep them interested and hopefully keep them writing for a long time.
Amazing. So you say you do a full-time job on the side,
I
which
do.
which is
I do.
understandable. How much time do you dedicate to this, and kind of is that working out with the amount of time you're dedicating to this? What does your kind of daily schedule look like?
Yeah, I'm very I've um I've been able to create my life in my pockets of this time, right? So I
Mm.
do have a full-time regular job. I work at a credit union. I do love my job. It's fun. That's what I've been doing my whole working career, has been in the banking and finance world. Um, and then my spouse is a flight attendant, so they're gone they're gone about 15 days a month,
Yeah.
traveling and, doing all that. So we don't have kids, so that does make things a little easier. I know I have that advantage that it's a little easier, that I'm not worried about their schedules or anything. Um, I have a couple other charity projects that I do too.
Oh wow. Okay.
I know. Those are a lot smaller commitment. I work on a community garden, so that's really seasonal because
Yeah, of
we only
course.
get a few good months of weather here for the community garden. And I do, using my writing skills, I do write cards of encouragement to kids that are in foster care. And I make these cards and I send them to the foster care agency and they distributed them to the kids. So that's pretty easy because I can just write a card even while I'm on a bus or something.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
pretty easy. So as far as this goes, though, American Diary Project is just, it's been, I just think of like this culmination of my whole life of this diary, of writing these diaries and never wondering if it was going to amount to anything. And so now I finally found, like, I found that place of, I knew just something in me just kept me keeping these diaries for so long. And so, like, how much time does it take? Gosh, I mean, it takes a lot of brain power because I'm thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking, like, how could I, or even, it kind of even makes me, when I do write in my diaries now, I'm like, how can I make my diary more interesting? Or how can I, like, put in more historical things into my diary? Like, I'm always thinking about those things, even writing in my own self now. Like,
Yeah.
let's put some more history in here and things like that. So, I mean, I would say it takes a lot of brain power for me, not a lot of time. um, I and Kate has asked me this before, and I don't really know because I don't really pay attention, but maybe I should. When I do type out diaries, either the ones on our website, or I have also started typing out my own
Mm-hmm.
in my older ones. And when I get done, because what I've done is I transcribe them for myself because I realize I want to keep my memories, but I don't want to keep my books. I want them to go on to the project.
Okay, yeah.
So I type them up on a Word document and I print them out and I put them in a 3-ring binder, and then I send the book to American Diary Project. And I do the same thing with the next one. So to me, Kate's asked me before, she's like, Bonnie, how long does it take to transcribe a whole diary? And I have no idea. Because some are easier than others. Myself, I can transcribe mine pretty quickly because I can read my handwriting well.
Yeah.
And I also probably, when you're writing your own self, you probably know what you're going to say
Yeah,
next.
what's coming
You know
next?
how you think.
Yeah.
And so I can probably already write what I would have written 25 years ago. But sometimes I get a diary that I'm typing up and it's from 1809 and the handwriting is an old doctor or an old farmer who's got very scripty, very messy handwriting, and so sometimes that takes quite a bit longer. So, and I don't really track it because I'm like, okay, I'll just type on it for a little hour here, and oh, I got a little time before my doctor's appointment, or things like that. So I think that's the biggest time constraint, is just sitting down and doing it. I think eventually we will get to, I would like us to get to a point that we can get them scanned a little faster than we do, because
Right.
it's a very manual process of take a picture of this page, take a picture of the
Yeah,
next
of
page.
course. Yeah.
And it's a little bit tedious because only kind of one person can do that at a time versus
Yeah.
50 of us that are working on typing diaries. Um, but I think we'll get there. But also we need to scale it because as the word gets out about us and we keep receiving more and more diaries, we need to be able to expedite these processes too. So I think that's a hurdle that we've got, but we'll get there. I can't even think about the time commitment myself.
Well, I mean, that's one of the difficult parts of doing a non-profit, right? Because as things get bigger, you suddenly start realizing that we can't just manage it as a board or as co-founders. You can't just manage it on your own, especially when there's such manual jobs, like taking a picture or scanning, and then also typing. It's such manual jobs. And sure, someone could argue that, oh, but there's systems available now where someone can write from a picture, right? And sure, you could use that, but my counter argument would be, you know, that system might not pick up the handwriting correctly and actually write something wrong. And because the diary is about someone's kind of like it's basically their brain on that piece of paper. If you've written it wrong, you might interpret it wrong, and it's that cycle of someone reads it and they've read it completely wrong than if they'd have just read the diary directly. And of course, one other thing that's lost in typing. I think typing is a really good thing to do to something like a diary, but one thing that is lost is that essence of handwriting, because sometimes you can just notice if someone wrote this particular day in really extra scribbly handwriting, they're probably in a rush. They might be angry. Whereas if someone's written it on really nice, eloquent handwriting, everything's really nicely thought out. That day they're quite relaxed. They just gave themselves time. Obviously, in a Word document, everything looks the same. So there's always an art to looking at the real thing and experiencing the real thing, but that's a real problem for you guys because you're only aboard right now, but you might have to, as time goes on, start thinking about, we've got so many things coming in, we need to start to speed up. And not always does speeding up mean put more people towards it. It might mean actually investing in better technologies. It might need investing in a better scanner, maybe even hiring someone who comes in and does this. And is that something you ever thought about, like how you're going to scale this, but without it being like a overburden on yourselves at the same time?
Yeah, it's been a topic of discussion. I don't know. I think it will be. I think at the time it's going to be some trial and error because
Of
you got
course,
to scroll
yeah.
forward. I think it's just, and it's hard to predict what capabilities we have. I don't say it's hard to predict what capabilities we have now, but if it's like one of those things. I know if I can get 20 people in a room, I can knock out a lot of books in one day. But can I get 20 people to Cleveland, Ohio?
Yeah, exactly.
When they
That's another
might live
thing.
or some
Yeah.
of our volunteers live 1,000 miles away. I think that's a challenge that we have. Um, it I think it's just going to be an ongoing learn as we go. And
Mm.
I heard an expression once: build the airplane wings while you're flying the plane. You're just
Wow.
trying to get it all figured out as you go a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think we have a lot of opportunity ahead of us and a lot of unknown predictability that we just don't know how fast that scale is going to come.
Yeah. No, it's an exciting time, and even with people that are working remotely, one thing that you could do is maybe have someone hired, or two people hired that take pictures really quickly, or maybe have a scanner, because obviously pictures, as the quality might not come out as good, but if you just have a scanner which just like really really good quality HD stuff comes out, and then you could always kind of send that file to people off online, or you could upload it to like a cloud, and then people in wherever they are in America can reach out to that cloud and then type it up. It means you can basically utilize the fact that some of your volunteers are far away, rather than calling them all the way to one place and have to do it all in the same time. But it's all a learning journey, and it's all kind of growth, right? I wanted to ask you, since you've clearly been typing out loads of diaries and you've consumed a lot of information, because these are inherently kind of people's life journeys, their life stories. Has anything resonated with you, or has anything you've read, or a culmination of things you've read, made you kind of rethink the way you live your life, or rethink the way you do things currently, knowing that this is kind of how people have done it before you?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing, um, I know, and I was a senior in high school on 9/11, which was such a huge thing here in America,
Mm.
and I've lived through so many. We all have. We've all lived through a lot of history in the last, even let's say, 10 years. Okay,
Yeah.
so I know for myself, I in my younger days, and not even that long ago, even at the start of, I have a journal entry from March 15th of 2020, and it is the most sugar coated, glossed over, because I'm trying to be, it was so early and we didn't know what was going to come all the way. At the time we were on 2 week shutdown, and
Mm.
so I was like, okay, in a couple weeks I'm going to go back to, it's a scary time right now, but I was still very optimistic that everything would blow over.
Yeah.
And so that diary entry of mine from March 15th of 2020, and it's so naive and sugar coated and like, And I look at that now and I'm like, oh, like not that I want to dwell on the bad things, but I do wish that I had been more elaborate in the past about some of these things. And so now I'm very like, and I love it when we find in diaries. I love it when we find old ticket stubs and old pictures and old just receipts of things. And
Yeah.
so I am very strict. So even when the things have happened now, like the presidential election that we had, and like all of the news that has happened in the months since the presidential election, I do write more about those things, those historical things, how much it relates to me or not directly. Because it's really that this is I want this to stand the test of time for 100 years from now.
Yeah.
What does one girl in Michigan think about these things? And I wish I didn't talk about a lot of this stuff. I didn't talk a lot about 9/11. I didn't talk a lot about presidential elections before. I didn't put in a lot of little funny things from the times, like a receipt or things like that. But I'm like, okay, 100 years from now, in my diary right now from a few months ago, I had a dream about a Victoria's Secret store shopping bag, and I stuck in my diary. I taped it in there, one of the bags from that store, so that you could see. How many 100 years from now, I'll be like, that's what the store shopping bags looked like back then.
Yeah.
And that's what was in my dream, right? So I'm trying to get more like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So you're trying to kind of almost record your opinions on things. So rather than just being about you, but it's also about like the things that are happening around me. How does that make me feel? Because the good thing about a diary and any reflection, if anyone's ever done journaling or reflection in general, it opens your conscious mind into just how much your subconscious mind thinks without you realizing. And you'll be surprised at like how the general election or how something that's happened in the news, something that happened abroad, some of your friends telling you, some of your friends might have told you I'm going on holiday, and you'll be like, oh, that's cool, but then later in your diary you're like, you know what, that made me feel really jealous. And
Yeah.
obviously you don't realize at the time, you're like, it doesn't bother me, but then you don't realize your subconscious there going, oh damn, I wish I'd gone on holiday. So it's these little things that I remember I did like a reflective exercise with someone, and I think I was writing about like how I need to get better at my time management, like a typical problem everyone faces nowadays. And they kept on telling me like, but why? Why are you struggling with that? And I was like, oh, because of this. Oh, okay, but why are you struggling with that? And it ended up with me kind of realizing that the reason I was struggling to manage my time today was all dependent on the time that I ate dinner the day before. Now, I would have never made that connection. Like, it makes no sense. Well, it was overnight. But then we realized, like, depending on when I eat dinner, depending on when I go to bed, if I get a good night's sleep or not, basically determines if I get a good day or not the next day. And it affects my entire subconscious thinking. And you almost have to train your conscious brain to think that way, right? But it does mean that later on, I'm sure you can agree, when you look back, if you have got those super deep, elaborate thoughts of like, how does everything make me feel? How do I feel about this particular thing? You just connect with yourself a lot more, rather than just like a regurgitation of this is what happened today. That's it. So that's a true thing. I think after reading loads of diaries, you'll have just kind of gained that. You'll have some diaries that are just, today I went to the doctor's appointment, doctor said I had this, got a prescription, came back. At the same time, you'll have some other person who said, today I went to the doctor's appointment, I was really scared, got really nervous, went in, walked in, this. It makes it so much more immersive and sensory. And I think that's something you're kind of trying to put into your own diaries, right?
All the more as I've got. Yes, for sure. So it'll
Yeah.
be good for ongoing.
Amazing. Well, kind of moving this forward, what is your wackiest plan for this? You've talked about a lot of the realistic plans, but in the dreams of dreams for this project, let's say in the next 5 years, what do you think would be the craziest, wackiest, most amazing thing that you could get achieved with this
Yeah.
project?
Oh, good question. Gosh. So my ultimate dream, I would love to have. So we have our library in Ohio, which is great. It's beautiful. I've been there a few times. But I want to have a library in every state, at least.
Okay,
So
nice.
I would love to have a gathering place. Because in my mind, I want everybody to read these diaries. And yes, everybody can read them online. You have, right? But I want people to come into our library, a dedicated library, and it's close enough to their home that they can easily get there,
Yeah.
right? You're not going to fly across America to Ohio. So I want to see us have more library branches in many places so that everybody can come and be welcome to just read it. You know, you can sit at our table and read some of the books that live there, or and have just get diary gatherings. Hey, let's all sit down on a Saturday afternoon and, you know, someone could pose a topic. Somebody could pose a topic about couches. I don't know. I'm just made that up.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, that's kind of what poetry groups do, right? They say, okay, let's write a poem today. Let's write a silly poem about couches, and then let's write a serious poem about death. You know, so and everybody kind of that's how it was when I was in college. Like you take these creative writing classes and you do these things. So I'd love to have just libraries everywhere that people can come easily and read diaries and have journal gatherings, because you do feel like an island when you're writing in your diary. You feel like it's only you. So I want you, hey, you know what, you're not alone. All these other people in the world, in Ohio, in Michigan, in New York, everybody in this room, we all do this one experience. I kind of feel like that way. I mean, there's a lot of communities like that, like video gaming. It's a very
Yeah.
solitary thing when you're playing a video game, right?
Yeah.
But then you go to these video game conferences. That's kind of how I want this to be, right? It's like you feel like you're alone when you're playing your video game at your house. You feel like you're alone when you're writing in a diary at your house. But when you come to a conference or just, you know, even just a small gathering of video game friends or people that play chess, I mean, any of these things, and then you go to a big chess tournament, you realize, oh, I have a lot of friends that could play chess and
Yeah.
I can make friends. And that's what I want us to be.
That sounds amazing. And it's something that's so uh not easily done, but I can feel like people will easily relate to that because in different, you know, it's the same thing that we were talking about before. Like a diary affects everyone, a life affects everyone. So people will all across America will have their own take on kind of collecting diaries. It also means that you don't have to rely on the one hub, which obviously for a country that's so massive as America, it can be difficult to kind of operate everything from one hub. And the other thing that's beneficial is you might start noticing that diary patterns vary across the states because obviously American history is different depending on whether you're east side, west side, wherever you are in it. So you might notice that even if you have 3 or 4 branches, the diaries collected are different. They might look different. The handwriting might be different. The stories covered might be different. And it just raises an entire new question of like, in the future, when you have like a really nice database of just stories collected, massive patterns might emerge on like what kind of things did people eat, what kind of things did people think about, what kind of things did people prioritize in their lives when they were born and grew up in a different place. I mean, really, the opportunities are endless, aren't they? And that's what makes it fun. And I feel like, you know, as I'm kind of wrapping up, this is something that's exciting and more for me because I read it before. I was genuinely intrigued, and I'm even more intrigued now that I can see that you've got this passion, you've got this energy, and this is something that really is like a personal project. It's a question that is I've never thought about, but it's a question that's so true. Like all these things you write about, who is it for? And of course, some people. I read an article recently which was about someone saying, "Oh, diaries, diaries, and I think it was about journals more, but you know, same thing. It was about diaries and I write a diary for myself, but once I'm gone, who is it for?" And it was like a, you know, the reader's answer kind of thing. And people were saying like, "Oh, I pass it down to my children," or some people genuinely just said like, "I have nothing for it. I'll just have to throw them in the bin, or just, you know, I'll just have to leave with them, whatever." Whereas this is answering that question of like, don't worry, you can put them into a repository where they can be stored and appreciated. So many people probably live their lives thinking they're undervalued or their life is pretty mundane. There's something major that happens in it, and then suddenly you've got a library bank which is going, actually, don't worry about it because your life is important to us. And there'll be people who read this and find it super interesting. You don't even realize. So I just have to commend you on kind of following through because for many people, passion projects unfortunately are something that fall through. Not many people can kind of commit to it, and so you've been able to do it. Find someone who kind of clicks with you, and yeah, well done on getting this up and going and having the excitement to
Thank
seeing
you.
it through.
Thank you. I feel like it's my little, you know, it's a labor of love, and you're like, okay, we're going, and then you grow and grow steadily, slowly, and
Yeah,
the right people come along, and that's what I want. I just want that. is worked for us, and I'm like, okay, let's keep going. We want to keep getting. We want everybody else to feel welcome in our clubs,
Yeah.
welcome in our diary clubs.
Yeah. And
That's our goal.
the other good thing to keep going is to have like a team of people that understands why you're doing it. Because another mistake some people fall into is, in growing the passion project, they hire that one person who's not really with the passion, but they're more with the money. Not that this will ever happen, but it can happen where suddenly someone's doesn't really understand the importance of keeping diaries, but they just want the money. They're really prioritizing that profit. And obviously, speaking to you, I can see you're not. You're really about, I want people to come into the museum. I want people to experience it. I want people to talk to each other about it. Of course, if you have a team of people that also share those values, it just means it's going to be compounding the results that you guys can bring out, working together on the same kind of collective mission.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Krishna. I'm just glad that you had us on today, and hope that maybe people will be encouraged to start their passion project and start a diary.
Yeah, exactly. Start a diary and send it in once it's completed. Write it up and send
Yes.
it in. Yeah. Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for coming on. It means a lot. I'm happy you were able to explain so well kind of what you're doing with this, why it means so much to you, and why it means so much to the other people who may want to get involved. One thing I'd like to ask you as a final question, for anyone out there who may also have their own passion project they want to start, but obviously still think about the same old kind of questions of like, how am I going to fund this? Can I integrate this into my already busy schedule? Is it even worth it? Will people be interested? What's the point of starting? What kind of advice would you give them to kind of maybe clear their doubts and persuade them to just, take the action?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think my encouragement is, um, money comes and goes, and I know that I'm lucky. I have a regular job that, sustains me.
Mm.
So money can't be the factor, because if it is, then you get burned out on it. And we started small. I can't despise small beginnings, right? We started in Kate's spare bedroom with her buying diaries on eBay. And then now we're at the point we don't need to buy diaries on eBay because we receive them. I think I think my biggest lesson right now too is that I got discouraged when I was like, the only question I had in my mind was, how can I find more diary people?
Mm.
And I was like very pigeon focused on that. And once now that I've really thought outside the box, so to say, it's like, okay, I'm realizing that there is more overlap in other areas. So I'm like, okay, I guess my encouragement would be like, find like-minded people in those other areas. If you are making pottery, I don't know, I'm just kind of making this up, but if you
Yeah.
are making pottery, maybe you could find some other people that like doing glass blowing, or um, oil painting. So if you can kind of think and just find a support group, even if they don't collaborate with you on your project, but if they can come aside you and say, okay, yeah, I had that same problem, or this art gallery failed and I got into this art gallery and it was great, and maybe you want to put your art into that gallery too, even if you're in different areas but in a similar, think about who are the next arenas to you, and
Yeah.
then who might even be outside of that, right? Maybe it is the writers that overlap with pottery. Maybe we are. Your first row would be the glass blowing and the oil painters, but the next row might be writers. It might be um, retail stores. I don't know. I think that's been my biggest encouragement this year, that I found other people outside of my people, and I think that would be where I would encourage anybody to start looking.
Yeah, it's all about kind of finding the networks and like you said yourself, that first layer you might be able to predict. So if you're doing a diary thing, you might be able to predict the diary people, and then the people who write wills, and then the people who collect diaries or maybe clean out homes after someone's passed. You might be able to predict that layer, but then the second layer you probably won't be able to. So who do that first layer also communicate with? You can only find out if you first reach out to them in the first place. And it's about taking that action. If it truly is a passion project, you will take that action, right? And so again, thank you so much for coming on, Bonnie. You've shared some amazing
Thank you.
insights. Your passion is felt through the screen. And I wish you all the luck with this, getting this off and expanded. And I'm sure you're going to do amazing things with your team.
Thank you so much, Krishna. I'm so glad I could be here with you today, and I appreciate your taking interest in us too.
And there we go. That's our conversation with Bonnie Quarter done. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully something a little bit exciting, something a bit unique. Definitely I found something quite unique in here. I've never heard of this before. If you want to get involved and be one of our guests or one of our listeners, as you can see, we have all sorts of guests on the program. Just click the links in the description. If you want to get involved with Bonnie, you can just go to their website at www.americandiaryproject.com, and they're also on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to speaking with you guys soon in our next episode. Take care.